Hello and welcome to Nivesh Kar Befikar. This is where Policy Bazaar and the Money Mile bring conversations to you to talk about insurance and various aspects of it. Now, for the last 12 days, we've been pretty much trying to digest the impact of the union budget on our investments, more so on equity, because the budget brought in that much dreaded long-term capital gains tax of 10%, with some kind of grandfathering up to 31st January of this year. Now, needless to say, it's caused a fair amount of angst, a fair amount of panic in the market as well. But I guess while that is one part of the developments that have happened, there is the other piece in terms of how do I now invest in equity. Tax is something which we have very little control on. It's a reality now. The government's announced it. We all have to live with it. But the concern is, how do I now continue to invest in equity and try and get the best possible returns that I can? Joining me today is Santosh Agarwal, who heads the life insurance business at Policy Bazaar, which is the leading online distributor, a disruptor, so to speak, when it comes to buying insurance online. Santosh, the first commentary that came out after the budget, or in fact maybe 2 or 3 days it took for people to digest, is the fact that ULIPs are not covered within the long-term capital gains tax. It mentions equity mutual funds, it mentions direct equity. While there is no specific mention of ULIP, but the presumption now or the facts now are that ULIPs aren't covered within this long-term capital gains. Is that a correct interpretation?
That's absolutely a correct interpretation. There are, I would say, 2 reasons why ULIPs are exempted from the LTCG regime. One, ULIPs have a small bit of insurance, a small component of insurance inbuilt. So the amount of premium that you invest, 10 times of that is the insurance cover that you get. And you have to pay a small amount for that cover. So once a small bit of insurance gets into the investment regime, it's considered insurance, and hence the LTCG does not apply. The other thing also to consider is that ULIPs come with a 5-year lock-in. So you have to mandatorily stay invested till 5 years. Post 5 years, you can withdraw your money anytime. Now, because there's a 5-year lock-in, there is a benefit of long-term capital gain there, because the long-term capital gain, definition of long-term capital gain, or long-term rather, was 1 year in the equities or the mutual fund regime. So here it's 5 years. So given it's such a long-term horizon, it's a 5-year horizon, and the insurance component both, ULIPs are still exempted from the capital gain tax.
Now let's step back a bit, because you know, ULIPs maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 14 years ago when they came in, they were very expensive products, and I'm going to throw a lot of the concerns that people have, and maybe you can clarify or give the facts in terms of what has changed. Some of the conversations we've been having here on Nivesh Kar Befikar have been trying to identify the changes that have happened. The biggest single concern were the charges, that ULIPs were very expensive products. In your first year, you could actually end up as the customer giving out almost 40 to 50% of your premium on various counts, and we'll talk about specific charges. How has that changed?
That's changed quite a lot, Vivek, and I would say that was the first generation ULIP. That was the generation pre-2010. Today we are living in the 4th generation ULIP, and unfortunately investors aren't still aware that ULIPs have come a full circle. So pre-2010, you're absolutely right. ULIPs used to cover a high charge upfront, and that charge could be in the range of 40 to 50%. But in 2010, the regulator came out with a regulation which simply said that if you are investing in a ULIP, and if the time horizon is 10 years or lesser, the total charge that you can apply is 3%. If you are investing for 10 years and longer, the total charge that you can apply is 2.25%. So post 2010,
and this is per year?
This is overall, for the overall tenure. For the overall tenure, that's the maximum that you can charge. If you compare that to a mutual fund today, The mutual funds also come with a charge of expense ratio of 2.25%. So it's no different. And that was post 2010. Now, the third generation ULIP came after 2013, I would say, when a company like HDFC Life introduced a product called Click to Invest. That product, in fact, has far lower charges than what was regulatorily allowed. So the regulatory cap was 3% or 2.25%. They came out with a product which was less than 2%. That, I would say, was a third generation ULIP. That product had zero premium allocation charge, zero policy admin charge. The only charge that they had was a fund management charge, which is equivalent to what mutual fund industry charges.
And how much is that?
That was 1.35%. Now, mutual fund can charge you 2.25%, and that charges every year. So that amount is the max. So if the outgo, you would say, in a mutual fund or a ULIP for that matter, the outgo from an investor and how the AMC or the insurance company earns is only the FMC charge. So that charge from 2.25 came down to 1.25%. Now we've come to the fourth generation ULIP. What does the fourth generation ULIP do? This company, it similarly like HDFC Life, Edelweiss Tokyo Life brought out a product which made the deal even sweeter. So they did away with premium allocation, they did away with policy admin. They in fact started investing back into your fund. They started adding 1% of the amount that you invest every year for the first 5 years. Then they started investing 3% of what you invest for next 5 years. Then they started investing 5% for the next 5 years, and then 7% for the next 5 years. So today, the total charge on a product like Wealth Plus, the Edelweiss product, is much, much lower than even a direct mutual fund. So that's where the ULIPs are today. And with the sweetened deal of long-term capital gain being exempted, it's almost like a no-brainer that one would shift their investments from a mutual fund to a ULIP today.
It's interesting. Let's talk about the fourth generation change. And as you said, it's probably also been driven by companies like yours where you've actually made it online, right? Now let's look at some of these charges and where they stand. And this is just to make it simpler for viewers to understand. You talked about a fund management charge. There were earlier mortality charges as well, commissions, administration charges, policy administration charges. Are these now all gone, so to speak, when you buy online? Do I pay commission at all?
There is zero commission when you buy online, and that's the reason some of these plans are not being sold by the offline industry, but because it's unviable. It's simply unviable for an agent to come to your house, to find you, to sit down with you and to explain the product, and then maybe only of the 100 people he talks to, maybe only 2 buy. So this whole proposition becomes unviable for the offline channel. Hence, this product is being distributed online, where the customer is expected to come, look at the product and buy himself. And hence, these products have a 0% commission, and it's being widely distributed in the online fraternity. So commission is zero. The interesting part is the admin charges are also zero. The premium allocation charges are also zero. So the only charge that's left is the fund management charge and the mortality charge. The mortality charge is towards the cost of insurance that you buy. Now the company has started returning that charge. So every year, if you were to invest say 1 lakh rupees every year, the company will start adding 1,000 rupees back to your fund. And the mortality amount is lesser than that. So over 5 years, if the total mortality charge, for example, was 4,000 rupees, the company is adding 5,000 rupees back to your fund. So in a way, the mortality is also zero. So you're getting the benefit of insurance. So if something happened to you over that tenure, the insurance amount will come to you. But in a way, you're not paying for that insurance amount. So what is left now? The only charge that's left is the fund management charge. And that fund management charge is 1.35%.
And is this specific to an odd scheme, or would you say that there are several such schemes out there which give the same proposition?
So this was the first one that came out. Very soon you will see a product from Bajaj on the similar lines. There's a product from Max Life also which is there that charges much lower fund management charge. So 1.35% is what the other ULIPs charge. This one charges 1.25% or even on the equity scheme. And by virtue of that, the total cost becomes lower. So I would say there are about 4 or 5 schemes today where the charges are much, much lower than what even a direct mutual fund can give you.
Let's just step back a bit. How do ULIPs work? In the sense that, since the comparison always ends up being with mutual funds. So when I invest in a ULIP, I get to pick the option of what, 100% equity, debt, balanced, how does it work? And it's all within the same scheme, right?
So the beautiful part about a ULIP is you can choose how much exposure you want to equity, how much exposure you want to debt. You want to manage the fund yourself, you want the company experts to manage the fund. All of this can happen within the same product or within the same plan. So if I invested say 1 lakh rupees, I can choose to invest 20,000 rupees in debt, 80,000 rupees in equity. 1 year later, if I feel that I've got good returns and now I want to move my returns or the gains that I've got to debt, it's freely allowed. So you do not need to exit the plan to then move to debt. You can switch between debt to equity any number of times and almost free of charge. You can also, if you at a certain point of time, if you feel that you don't want to manage the fund yourself and there are experts who are doing it and you want the experts to do it for you, you can also opt for that. So all of this is allowed within the same plan. And I would say the best way to do it is let the experts manage it for you. Over a period of time, when you start making returns, when your profits start coming into equity, those profits can move to debt so that at least whatever you've gained, that stays safe. So let the experts manage it for you, and whenever you want to take over, it's just up to you. It's just free of cost.
One of the benefits, Santosh, that a mutual fund gives you, for example, is that there are a plethora of schemes and options, right? It tells you you can go buy a mid-cap fund, you can buy a small-cap fund, depending on your risk profile. You can buy a large-cap fund, you can buy a hybrid fund, multi-cap fund. There are all kinds of schemes out there, right? When I buy a ULIP plan, am I stuck with just 2 or 3 options, or are there many, many more options within that plan?
See, fundamentally, the mutual fund scheme, the way it works or the way it operates is exactly how the ULIP operates. So ULIP at the back end is nothing but a mutual fund in a way. So all different fund options that you find on the mutual fund platform, you will find the same options on the ULIP platform as well. So you can go blue chip, you can go mid cap, you can go small cap, you can go debt, you can go hybrid. All of those instruments or all of those schemes also apply to ULIP. So I would say fundamentally the back end or the way the money is invested is not different of a mutual fund or a ULIP. It's actually the same back end. So investors should just, if they want to invest in say a mid-cap fund, you will have the same, almost the fund option on an MF platform and the ULIP platform. So there's absolutely no difference there.
Some questions coming in as well, and if you're watching, please send us your questions. Happy to take any of them. 2 questions have come in. Tanya Bandopadhyay has sent us this question. What is the best way to dodge the LTCG tax if I want to stay invested for a long while? I think that's the operative word, long while, Tanya. We'll get Santosh to answer that. Nidhi Mishra also has a question. She asks, could ULIPs be an alternate for mutual funds after LTCG taxes? If yes, what could be the implication of buying a ULIP? I mean, does it carry hidden charges? 2 very interesting questions, and let's talk about the larger issue there as well. So the first point that Tanya is making is, I'm willing to stay invested for a long while. I think this was one of the mistakes that people made, or probably they were made to make through mis-selling of ULIPs, which got it a bad name, was that they were sold as very short-term products. They were sold as products where you said initially there was a 3-year lock-in and then it went to 5. You were told really that you stay invested for 3 years or 5 years and then you can exit. That was a minimum time period, not a maximum.
Not a maximum.
It was just that you had to be there for 3 or 5 years. Now the rule is 5 years. But and I think that's where the mistakes happened, isn't it? That people were missold, told you can move out. And when you moved out within 5 years, you found that the money that you thought you would have got, you didn't get because the first year charges were a lot. So what would you tell people who would want to buy a ULIP? How many years should you stay invested before you go and buy a ULIP?
See, if you want to invest for a long term, ULIP can be a beautiful instrument, but what you need to keep in mind is you cannot withdraw the money for the first 5 years. So if you can stay invested at least for minimum of 5 years, then definitely go in for a ULIP. In terms of long term instrument, ULIP can be the most efficient instrument in that manner. One, now that there are no long-term capital gains, it makes the deal even sweeter. But even before that, even before the long-term capital gain came into picture, if you were investing for a long term, it only made sense to invest in a ULIP.
Long term means what? 10 years, 15
long
years?
Long term means
20
5 years. Long term means 5 years. So the only thing that you need to keep in mind is if you cannot withdraw your money in the first 5 years, if you can stay invested for 5 years and longer, then go for a ULIP. But if you feel that 5 years is too long a horizon for you, if within 5 years you may want to withdraw your money, then ULIP may not be the good option. Then you should definitely opt for alternate options like mutual funds.
But again, just to add my point to it, I think while 5 years is a good time frame for equity, what we say is that, link it to your goal. So if your retirement is 30 years down the line, stay invested for 30 years. You don't need to get out at 5 years because then the question emerges that, oh, I exit, and then somebody comes around and says, buy one more. And that's something that one should be cautious about, right?
Absolutely. So when you buy a ULIP, buy a long-term ULIP, buy a ULIP of say 15 years, 20 years, or even 30 years. And after the first 5 years, you can withdraw whenever you want, and there is no charge. So why lock in yourself today for a short term? Buy a 30-year ULIP, buy a 20-year ULIP.
Do you have to specify when you buy it? You
absolutely not. Absolutely not. So just go in for a 20-year or 30-year ULIP, and after 5 years, whenever you want, just a simple instruction to the insurance company that you would want to withdraw your fund, and 100% of the amount will return to your bank without a single rupee being deducted. So I think in that, if there are goals that you've set for yourself, go in for long terms.
Okay, let's take Nidhi's question, which is another very relevant question. What are the hidden charges? When I hear you say this charge doesn't happen, this charge doesn't happen, it almost sounds too good to be true. Are there any hidden charges? Because see, that's the sense that people are, have. Traditionally, perhaps there were a lot of charges and they weren't told about them. There's a hangover. So are there any hidden charges now?
See, ULIP fundamentally is the most transparent product. So when this
you
question,
believe that? Because
absolutely.
Again, there's a lot of criticism. It's not transparent. It doesn't give me monthly details.
It's the most transparent product in that way. In fact, there is no other product where you have to mandatorily disclose all the charges in line items. So for example, if you want to buy a ULIP, there's something called a benefit illustration, which is available to you at your disposal. Go and have a look at that table. It's a simple table that tells you that if you invest so much money, this much is getting deducted, this much is getting invested, and this is the approximate return you will get. In fact, it's so simple that it also illustrates what return you will make if assume the rate of return was 8%. So it transparently actually puts it down on a table, what amount you invest, what is the deduction, and what is the return that you will get. So I do not think there is any way you can not know what is the full product, what is the way it gets invested, how is the money getting invested, and what's the return that you will make.
And these are all the fourth generation ULIPs you're talking about.
These are all fourth generation ULIPs, and in fact, even in the offline or the online ULIP, it is mandatorily. Regulator has mandated that you have to disclose a benefit illustration to the consumer for the consumer to actually know what is the money invested, what is the return you're making, and what are the deductions. Now also the deductions so that you can understand the illustration better. There are just 4 heads of deductions, rather 5 if it's an offline product. There'll be 5 which is a commission column. So the commission column will exactly tell you what is the commission going to the agent. For the online products, that commission column is 0. Now the 4 columns that are there is a policy admin column. The policy admin column is an admin charge that the insurance company charges for maintaining your policy, for sending the document to you, for various things that you may want to do over a period of time in the product. That charge is now 0 in the online products. The second one is a premium allocation charge. So if you invest say 1 lakh rupees again, the company says that this is the amount that I will deduct from your fund before investing to manage the policy for you. That charge in some way was the company's earning. Now that charge is also zero. So there are 3 columns which are already zero. There are 2 columns which are left. One is the fund management charge. That charge is an expert managing your money for you. And that charge is today minimum. It's capped at 1.35%. And that charge, I think an investor would want to part so that his money is managed well and the person gets a good return. The last charge, the last column that is left is a mortality charge, which is the risk of cover. This is a risk cover. So when you buy a ULIP, you buy a small insurance amount. So if you invest say 1 lakh rupees, the insurance cover will be 10 lakh rupees. For the 10 lakh rupees of insurance, there's a small charge called the mortality charge.
And is that the same as if I were to buy a term cover?
Absolutely.
The same charge?
It's the same charge. It's the same charge that you would pay for buying a term insurance cover. It's nothing but a term insurance cover. So if you think of it, it's term plus mutual fund packaged into one product, and that becomes ULIP.
Okay. Lots more questions coming in as well. Sameep Singh says, you mentioned low-cost ULIPs. Please suggest the best plans I could invest in.
I would recommend you should go have a look at Edelweiss Wealth Plus, which is one of the most efficient products. There's a Max Life online savings plan, which is also a very efficient product. There's HDFC Click to Invest. There's a Bajaj product which is coming out very soon in the next couple of days. And there's also a product from Bajaj Life, which is an existing product. That product has some bit of charge, but the fund returns are so superior that those charges will not make any dent to your investment.
There's another question from Sumit Narula, who says, what if I have already invested in long-term equity linked mutual fund scheme, and then says debt funds, what could be the implication of the changes in the budget? How is it going to affect my investment? I guess if you've bought an ELSS or any mutual fund scheme, debt, there's nothing new. It was already within the long-term capital gains tax. For equity, it is 10%. So even if you had bought an ELSS earlier, you're grandfathered up to 31st January 2018. Whatever your gains post that is what you're going to be taxed on. Right?
Absolutely. Just adding to that, the debt in the debt scheme, again in the ULIP, it was always tax exempted. So even if you went the mutual fund route and you bought a debt mutual fund, there is a tax that you will pay. On the ULIP debt, there is no tax that's there.
Prachi Gupta Sharma has this question. Who might come under the radar of LTCG taxes, new investors or existing ones?
So the new investors, if you were to invest post 1st of April, there's obviously an LTCG that you will have to pay. If you're an existing investor, all the gains that you've made up to 31st of Jan are exempted. If you sell your mutual fund or your equity investment before 31st of March, again, there's no tax that you'll have to pay. If you sell post 1st of April, that's when you will have to pay tax. But the tax will be on the gains that you make post 31st of Jan.
What have been the returns that insurance ULIPs, for example, have given? Because now they've been in existence for 10 to 15 years. Are the returns that they've given, and how often do they disclose them? Do they disclose them on a monthly basis? Is it on a quarterly basis? Because mutual funds give you your portfolio every month. How does that part of it work?
So the insurance companies have to mandatorily disclose every month what has been the return over the last, since the fund started.
Okay.
So rolling 5-year, rolling 3-year. So every month the return is updated on the insurance companies' websites. There are also companies, independent firms like Value Research, etc., who do this on a daily basis, who do a NAV compounding and who kind of tell you what is the return that you've got over a period of time. Those are updated every day. So if you look at sites like Value Research, which also feed into data like Policy Bazaar, you will see a daily return updated. So you will see a return updated as of last yesterday. So I think there's no difference actually. It actually operates like a mutual fund. There's absolutely no difference in the way the returns are updated. If you see the returns of ULIPs for the last 5 years, the returns have been moderately of about, so there are ULIPs which give you above 20%, there are ULIPs which give you 15 to 20%. So I think they're no different in any way than the mutual funds.
Okay. There's a question coming from Dhruba Jyoti Sly Kalita. My understanding is that ULIP is better and mutual fund specific with the recent tax change. I am looking to buy the Edelweiss Wealth Plus. What's your recommendation, Santosh Agarwal? You already mentioned that that's a scheme that
that's one of very, very efficient products that you could invest in.
Okay. There is another question coming from Mahesh Rao. Though Mahesh, if you could just clarify a little bit more on your question. You mentioned that what is the IRA calculation after 5 years?
I think he means to say IRR.
IRR, yeah, that's what I thought as well. So can you talk a little about that over the last 5 years?
The rate of return that ULIPs have given, again, like I said, there are ULIPs that you will find which are those exceptional ones that you will see, and those will be few, who have given you over 20%. But you will find a host of ULIPs that will give you in the range of 15 to 20. So there will be a number of schemes that you can go find online that have given you a return of 15 to 20%.
Okay. Dhruba Jyoti again has a second question. She says, is Morningstar rating best way to judge investment performance? In fact, that's an interesting point, because for mutual funds, you have a lot of agencies like Morningstar, for example. There are some others who give potential customers some sense of rankings, that which could be the better one to pick basis the performance and other criteria. Is there a way, or for example, since you're an aggregator, you're not insurance manufacturer, is there a way for a person to go and check through an independent source which are the ULIPs that have performed better, which are the schemes which are better?
These same research firms, Morningstar and Value Research, also give ratings on ULIPs, on the ULIP plans. So if you go, for example, let's talk about Wealth Plus. Now Wealth Plus had, say, 8 funds within it. You can invest in 8 different fund options. Each of these fund options, you will find a rating on these fund options on Morningstar.
Okay.
It's just that the mutual fund industry has been able to communicate this to the investor. Some of this is truly applicable and totally applicable for ULIPs as well. It is just that ULIPs today are still looked at as not so good products, and that's why a lot of research or a lot of consumer I think finding has not gone into it. So the same research agencies like a Morningstar or a Value Research will also give you ratings on these ULIP plans. So we as an aggregator, we can show this to the investor. We cannot rate a particular plan, and that's by regulation. But we can.
You're saying there are agencies.
There are agencies,
like
and these are the same agency, Morningstar and Value Research, who give you ratings. So in fact, the Edelweiss company, their ULIP plans, they very proudly say that all of their schemes are a 5-star rated fund by Morningstar. Okay. So some of this information is readily available on some of these websites. So
Dhruba Jyoti, you can go to Morningstar and get a sense as well of what are the rankings and which is the more preferred scheme. Sanjeet Bhavanani says, how could I select the best ULIP for myself? Sanjeet, actually, if you're just joining in, she just answered that question. There are a lot of independent agencies, but I think also what we do say is that since there is now an adequate disclosure made online by various schemes, it may be worth your while to check individually as well, because all the charges are now by regulation meant to be disclosed. So you could look at which of the schemes the charges are higher. The performance, you could go to one of the independent agencies as well to see their ranking.
Absolutely.
But do your own homework as well, is what we say for any investment.
So we've compiled all of this data that these rating agencies provide, the fund performance, the last 3 years, 5 years, total cost, and all of this is readily available to you on one platform. So you can go have a look at Policy Bazaar. You will get a detailed view of all of the costs, all of the returns, all of performance, all of that.
How easy or difficult is it to buy it online? Okay, so Mahesh has written back, IRR, what is your product going to give after 5 years? 20% hope again. You need to see that or need to check that. Example, I invest 1 lakh for 5 years becomes 5 lakh, the age of 35. Where my money stand after 5 years on your product? Well, that's, Mahesh, impossible for anyone to predict, right? Because these are market-linked products. Just like a mutual fund can't tell you where you'll be 5 years from now, neither can a ULIP, I'm assuming. But absolutely, I think you all go with an 8% kind of an illustration.
That's true.
Most financial planners I talk to go with a 12% for any market-linked combination of equity and debt, so to speak. So I doubt whether you can answer what the next 5 years would be.
Very difficult, but given the past record, and if I were to use the same 12% kind of an IRR, then if you invested say 10,000 rupees, an SIP of 10,000 rupees in ULIP for 5 years, post 5 years you would likely to make about 8 lakh rupees. And that's close to, you know, the kind of return MFs would also kind of illustrate. But again, both of these are illustrations. That 12% could be 20%, that 12% could also be 9%.
You use the word SIP just now, and that's something that has become very popular with a lot of investors as a form of investing. Simply put, it's just about putting your money on a monthly basis, small amounts, to, you know, check for the rupee cost averaging it gives you. It helps curb the volatility of the market as far as you're concerned. Is that something that a ULIP offers you too, or do you have to do a lump sum payment?
You can do a monthly investment, and that's exactly the way you would invest in an SIP. That's why I use the term SIP in ULIP. So SIP is nothing but a monthly investment in a scheme. You can go opt for a monthly investment in every ULIP that you want to today. In fact, the ULIPs that are sold online, almost 95% are sold through the SIP route. So they're sold through a monthly, so you can go invest 10,000 rupees every month, invest 5,000 rupees every month, and you can keep investing for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years.
One of the concerns that people again flag off when it comes to ULIP is that if I'm not happy with the fund performance, I don't have an opportunity to get out and go somewhere else for 5 years. Is there a criteria that if you've been significantly underperforming, I can exit, or I can stop paying my premiums at least till then and start it maybe in some other fund?
You cannot withdraw within the first 5 years. So even if the fund is not performing, I would suggest if you've locked yourself in equity and the fund is not performing, switch to debt, because debt is nothing but government-backed securities, and those will give you a 6-7% return. So you can switch to debt. You can stop paying your premiums, and the amount of premiums that you have paid, those will at the end of 5 years come to you as maturity proceeds. So that's one way of operating. You can then go to alternative options, other forms of ULIPs that give you, and you can check the last 5-year returns or the last 3-year returns before you make an investment again. Also, the fact that after 5 years, whenever, if you feel that okay, after 5 years the returns are, maybe they have gone up, and now you feel you want to continue keep being invested, even that option exists with you. So I would say if the funds are not performing, move to debt, stop paying future premiums, look out for an alternative option, look out for ones that have given you a solid performance in the past, and invest there.
You know, you talked about the insurance cover that comes with it. Now, if I've invested say 1 lakh and I get therefore a 10 lakh cover, which is what the law says, the rules say. Over a period of say maybe 10 or 12 years, maybe this 1 lakh becomes 14 lakh and I die. What do I get? I get 14 lakh plus 10 lakh, or do I get 14 lakh? What do I get? How does it work?
You will get the fund value, which is 14 lakh. That is the amount that you will get.
Because it's above 10 lakh.
Because it's above 10 lakh. Also, when you invest in the first year, suppose you invested 1 lakh rupees, your insurance cover is 10 lakh rupees. Now, of the 10 lakh rupees, 1 lakh you've already paid. So in about 6 to 7 years, the total insurance cover, which is 10 lakh rupees, gets covered by the amount that you invested, and the fund would grow, right? Your money would grow.
Sure.
So the money keeps growing and you keep investing. So the moment the 10 lakh rupees gets covered by your investment itself, the mortality charge becomes 0. So if you buy, example, a 15-year product, the insurance amount will keep reducing every year. In about 7 or 8 years, that amount becomes 0. So the company is not charging you after that for your insurance. So they're only charging you till the time your fund value is lower than the insurance cover.
And you're saying some of the new 4th generation schemes aren't even charging you mortality from day one?
Yes, absolutely. They're returning that amount to you. So they're charging, say, 1,000 rupees, they're adding back 1,000 rupees. If next year they start charging you 800 rupees, they still add 1,000 rupees. So in 5 years or over 10 years, if they charge you say 4,000 rupees, they're actually adding back 10,000 rupees to your fund.
All right. Thank you very much, Santosh, for coming by. And lots of questions that have come in. Some we've tried to answer, most actually we've tried to answer, but this is something that is worth considering. Things have changed. Not too much is known about these changes, and maybe we all need to understand the changes, because at the end of the day, when we invest, we want the best out of that. We've tried to answer in a very honest way some of the concerns, some of the advantages, but I'm sure you would have a lot more questions. So please feel free to write into us here on the Money Mile, and we'll be happy to arrange several more interactions and answer your questions more specifically. Thank you once again, Santosh, for coming by. This was Nivesh Kar Befikar, a joint presentation by the Money Mile and Policy Bazaar. Thank you for watching.